Welcome to the Korea Society's video series, Author Talks. The author and translator of Cursed Bunny are back with a new collection of short stories. Your Utopia stories, written by Bora Chung and translated into English by Anton Hur, is filled with Bora Chung's inimitable blend of horror, absurdity, and dark humor. Set in near and distant future, the stories in Your Utopia takes place in different, yet sometimes uncannily familiar settings, reflecting our deepest fears and desires. We are thrilled to have, for the first time in this Author Talks series, both the author and the translator together. Bora Chung and Anton Hur joins us from Korea. Welcome back to the Korea Society. It is great to see you too.
Thank you for having us.
So, Bora, Your Utopia was, I believe, published in Korea in 2020. Can you tell us about the 8 stories in this collection, the English version, and when they were written? Is this the same collection as the one you published in Korea in 2020, or were other stories added?
I think it was published in Korea in 2021, and it's the same stories, even the same order, I think. Just the title story changed from To Meet Her to Your Utopia because to meet her without the verb conjugation sounds weird to English speakers. And most of the stories were written in somewhere between 2010 and 2021, right before the publication. So these are newer stories compared to Cursed Bunny and more sci-fi, I guess. There are no curses, there are no bunnies. There are more robots and zombies and murderous humans, but humans are mean, robots are sweet. No, in Cursed Bunny, the robots were mean too. The robots are sweeter here.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to talk about that. Anton, I know you normally select the authors you want to translate. What drew you to Bora's stories, and what compelled you to do translation of her work again?
I think the biggest thing about what drew me to Bora is her language. And I know Bora really does not think highly of her own style for some reason. But I love Bora's writing style. I think it's very textured, and there are different kinds of texture to it. And she is completely unafraid of letting something sound a little weird sometimes and or a little rough. Bora's more concerned with the energy behind the story than she is like presenting some kind of over-polished, like so perfect that it's dead kind of uncanny valley prose that I think a lot of writers kind of fall prey to, or is the expression fall victim to. Excuse me. And I think Bora is that energy that Bora has is so apparent in her stories and so apparent in her style, really, that it just makes you very excited as a translator to work on that kind of textured prose. And because, it's just so refreshing, it's such a great challenge, and just the day-to-day of working on Bora's language is the complete joy just as a translator that I whenever I have another Bora book to translate, like it's like, oh yay, I can finally finish doing this project and do another Bora book. And it's always like this really great moment. So, and with Your Utopia, this is a short story collection. And so the short stories are especially Bora's forte, I think. I mean, she's written great novels, of course, but I think really the short story allows her to be like even more weird than she is normally. And I think the weirder Bora gets is like my favorite kind of like realm of Bora, where she's completely like her artistry is completely unrestrained and she can just like go for it. And so yeah, so I was very, very excited to work on Your Utopia.
Was it different doing it for the second time? Was it easier? Was it more challenging?
Yeah, I think doing this book, in some ways it was easier because I knew what Bora was supposed to sound like by this point. But I feel like I knew that immediately when I met Bora and when I was like reading her work for the first time. I always knew like how she was supposed to sound like. But as Bora said in her introduction, the robots this time around are more warmer and more human. And in some ways, the stories in this book are more fantastical than Cursed Bunny because Cursed Bunny, at least most of the characters were basically human. Even, the head in the toilet was a human in some form. But here, most of the characters are not human, or there's some kind of border, or there's some kind of other. And this book is really about different kinds of other, and how we give them our humanity, how we imbue them with humanity. And so this was a warmer book to work on than First Bunny, I think.
Yeah, because I thought there was this real sense of despair and sadness in many of the stories in My Utopia. Yet also there's like this will to survive. And how one survives seems to be by really connecting and bonding with the others. It didn't feel so lonely in this book. And there seems to be a glimmer of hope somewhere, like down the line somewhere. Um, and that's quite different from the impression I had while reading Cursed Bunny, which was just really, really scary and frightening for me. Um, so, Bora, was there an overarching theme, so to speak, when you were writing these stories? Or were you just in a different place in your life? I know the stories were, as you just mentioned, written over a certain period of time. It's not like you sat down and wrote all eight of them in a very short period of time. But so, what do you think? Was there a theme, or is it just you being in a different place in a different time in your life?
I wrote most of these stories while I was still teaching. So, and the very first one, Center for Immortality Research, that actually happened. Like that story, actually, 80% of that story actually happened in that exact order. Until the weird guy comes out and starts like messing up the gala. So uh I guess the overarching theme comes mostly from the science fiction class I was teaching. We were discussing what it means to be human. That was the overarching theme of the class, and what does it mean to have a sense of self? What does it mean to try to find meaning? What is the meaning of life? And how do we relate to or forge a relationship with another being that is not human but has a sense of self? Those kind of things. That uh in that realm, we discussed, under that umbrella, we discussed artificial intelligence, robots, smart machines, etc., etc. So some of the topics are directly from that class, and some of the things are what I learned from my students. And that's where that theme generally comes from. I guess I wasn't thinking about that theme specifically to write this particular book, as you said, but that was the theme I was thinking about for about a decade while I was teaching.
Yeah, because it seems like the stories in Your Utopia fits really close to what we, or I should say, I think of as science fiction, mainly because there are robots and machines and spaceships and aliens. You mentioned that it's inevitably you wanted to talk about what it means to be human by using these elements. And so, how do these elements help you tell the story you want to tell? And what did you learn from your students while you were teaching these classes that helped you write these stories?
The first thing I learned from my engineering students was that we already have robots that think like human, and they will think like human um, in they will develop and advance faster and faster, and they will think more and more like human, or they already do think like humans. They reason, the machines reason like humans, but it's almost impossible to make a robot that looks like human, like physically looks like human. So our physical appearance, with all the flaws, the wrinkles, the blemishes, that all the cosmetics company want to get rid of, that's what makes us human, essentially. We are human because we are flawed, and we are mortal, and because we will one day die. And we are human because we feel the loss, and each of us are irreplaceable. We are unique. That's what I learned in that class. And believe me, my students were unique, very unique. So that's what I generally learned, like over and over again, each and every semester. And that's what I came to believe about what it means to be human, and what it means to be, not exactly what it means to be human, but what it means to be in this physical form and have the desire to form some kind of relationship with the world and whatever other there is out there. Because at the core of our humanness, I think we need to form some kind of relationship. That the desire to form a relationship with the world is what makes us really human. And that's why we feel loss. That's why we grieve. And that's why we love. And that's why we live the way we live.
Yeah, because as you both mentioned earlier, the robots or the machines in this book, they are not so scary anymore, or they're not as threatening. Um, Actually, one of our staff who read the stories described them as sort of the individual monsters haunting the human journey, but they seem to be more sad and almost trying to be more like humans, but quite cannot do that. Can you tell us a little bit more about your robots and machines and what they mean to you? If being human, you just talked about what it means to you to be a human. What do you think robots and machines are then?
The hot topic these days in science fiction studies in Korea is posthumanism and transhumanism. And posthumanism is posthumanism and transhumanism both deal with what comes next after humans. Because we are ruining the earth and we will go extinct. And we are really, really good at killing each other and at killing other species. And I think that's what we do best as humans. Like that's, I don't want to define our humanity with it, but we're really good at killing. Um, so what's gonna come next? And posthumanism means that we will be replaced. It's post-human, so we'll go extinct, and smart machines or smart apes or some other species will take over. And if we already created the smart machines that already think like human beings, so maybe they will replace us, or they will kill us off because that's what we taught them. Killing is what we do best, and we taught that. We that's our legacy to our smart machines. Or maybe we will incorporate the best aspects of being a machine, which is machines are more durable generally. They're stronger than the physical forms of most of humans have. And like in Your Utopia, there's hope in Your Utopia, the title story, because machines don't really die. You can replace the parts or recharge the battery, and there's always hope that they will come alive again. So maybe we can incorporate that into to enhance or bolster our bodies, and then we will become some other thing that is not entirely human but not entirely machines. And that is roughly what transhumanism means. We will transcend to something different, but we don't know yet what that is. So that's what so when it comes to robots, I think my robots are sad because humans are still humans in these stories. Most of the stories, humans are still humans. They are not like transhumans who are superhumans and Iron Man and fly and like fight evil and stuff. So they die, humans die, but robots learn to form a relationship with living organisms, and robots don't understand why these living organisms are dying and disappearing, and they are sad. But at the same time, humans are really good at killing each other, so they kill and eat each other.
They do. But speaking of Your Utopia, the title story, there's a reference to, quote, inorganic intelligence, which sounds quite close to what we commonly refer to as artificial intelligence. So I was just wondering what, and I don't know what Bora wrote in Korean for that word. So I wanted to ask both of you, why did you two decide on this particular wording? And what are your thoughts on AI, especially as writers yourselves these days?
That particular story, Your Utopia, is based in it's set in a different planet. So I was thinking maybe there will be alien mechanisms that are different from what humans think as robots and machines, but turn out to be non-organic, but they're thinking machines. We don't know what's out there, so that's why I wrote it that way.
And Anton, why did you choose to call it inorganic intelligence?
I think it's from I got that term from uh the movie AI that Stanley Kubrick started, and I think it was Steven Spielberg who finished it, which is based on a Philip K. Dick story. It's about a little boy who is basically like a robot who is a boy robot who is purchased by grieving parents, basically. And the robot is supposed to replace the child, and then things happen. And one of the terms they use in that film, and I presume the story, is that they make a distinction between orga and mecha, where orga is, carbon-based life forms. Mecha is mechanical, silicon, that the microchipped, mechanical machine-based robots. And the whole point of the story and the movie is that the distinction between orga and mecha is not as distinct as you would think. And I think part of the attraction of robots for humans and for storytellers is how human they are. And it's also the fact that we are organic machines. Like we ourselves are machines, really. What is a cell but a machine? And so if we are machines as well, and we have souls, then isn't it also very logical to assume that a mecha would also have a soul if it is performed in a certain way? The this idea of having sad robots, and why it's so attractive, I think, is because like, we're all sad robots. Like human beings are sad robots. Human beings are kind of like very flawed, very complex, but very flawed robots. And so we are all we're not human by default. Like we all fail at being human sometimes. We're considered less human sometimes. For example, if a genocide is going on, you are considered less human, and therefore you are considered fair game. And they can treat you like animals, or they can treat you like robots. And that's kind of I think, the logic behind this idea that, robots being like, oh, are they human or are they machine? We're not asking them that question. We're asking ourselves, are we human or are we machines? Like that is the real question that we are asking. Um, I've like said in public many times that I'm not, as a translator, I'm not super worried about AI because every single AI model that I have encountered requires a lot of data, and it needs like so much data that it needs like 1,000 Anton Hurs to give it the data to make one AI Anton Hur, and 1,000 Anton Hurs do not exist. There's only one, and he's very expensive. So like it's not gonna happen. The models that we have, it's just not gonna happen anytime soon. But tech bros, like you're free to keep selling your snake oil and getting your venture capital based on the snake oil, just secure your bag. But I'm generally not bothered myself. And like I think for writing, it's a little different. It's really interesting that robots may replace writers, but not translators. But but for writing, I think like the Akutagawa Prize, like that fancy Japanese prize that they have, like it was recently won by an author who used a bit of chat GPT in the prose. Not all of it, but like a significant portion of it was generated by chat GPT. So I think it'll be interesting to see like where those tools lead them. But even in that instance, that author had to make the decision to include that text or not include that text. Because what we say found art is also art. So if that's the case, then why can't that be the case for literature as well?
So Anton, as someone who has worked with Bora's work as well as other Korean sci-fi writers, do you have any opinion of the scene, if there's a one, of the Korean science fiction? And how does Bora's work fit into that genre or differ from the others?
Well, Bora was until recently the president of the Science Fiction Writers Union of Korea, so she's actually much better positioned to answer this question from my limited perspective. And I have translated a few science fiction and fantasy authors in Korea at this point. Not all of them have come out. Very exciting news ahead. But I think science fiction as a whole is very removed from the mainstream of Korean mainstream literature. Like it is in the States, but thanks to authors like Bora especially, because she's such a multiple transatlantic award finalist, because she's so successful that she's kind of bringing a lot of science fiction into the mainstream. So if you go to bookstores like Kyobo, if you go to Kyobo Bookstore, you'll see Bora's new releases in the literary fiction section, and not either they're not in the genre section or like they're in both sections. So Bora is definitely like being she's more positioned as this mainstream literary fiction author than she is genre at this point. And that's been an interesting transition to observe because I personally don't really believe in the division of genre so much, and especially science fiction, which is such a moving genre to me, such a literary genre to me, that I think Bora is just basically showing everyone what was always true. It's not like she, rose to the surface. It's more like the surface came down to her, and we're like, oh, we're gonna meet you at your level, and that's been really thrilling to see.
Are there any particular challenges of translating this particular genre? Because translation doesn't mean you're just translating words. You have to translate the culture and the context into another language for the readers who may not really understand them. So, based on your experience, is there particular challenges? Because sci-fis really usually talk about issues of the society and of that country, sometimes very specifically.
Oh yeah. I think the main thing, and I believe I discussed this in the Duna talk that I gave at Korea Society, is basically there's a lot more glossing that goes on if you have to translate science fiction. You have to explain things a lot more, but in a very subtle way. I mean, we do that for all translated literature because the cultural context is so different between source and target languages. But with science fiction, you have the extra a burden of this world is actually does not exist. And things that the people in that world take very casually, you have to find a way to explain to the reader. And with Korean science fiction, there's the added burden that it's also Korean literature, which traditionally Korean authors are very reluctant to explain things to the reader. They want the reader to come to them and figure it out. Whereas English readers are much more used to writers coming to them to to explain things to them. And so there's always a delicate balance between translating from Korean writers to English readers. And when you add the kind of burden of science fiction on it, then there's even more that you need to kind of figure out, should I tell them this now, or is this important that I don't tell them this now? Like there's a lot more kind of CPU um, time that goes into processing translations from science fiction. But it's fun and it's worth it. And I like that it forces the translator to think a bit more because there's so many mindless translations where translators are not really reading what they're translating. And I think you're gonna be replaced by AI translation if you keep doing that.
So I wanted to ask you, Bora, a dictionary definition of utopia is an imagined place or state of being in which everything is perfect. So therefore, by definition, utopia doesn't really exist. It's an imagined place. I know you've lectured about this idea of utopia versus dystopia. So I was wondering if you can tell us a little bit about that.
When Thomas More coined the word utopia, the Greek etymology meant that a good place and a non-place. So somewhere that is good and some place that doesn't exist. So it can be interpreted as an imaginary place, but it could also, I understand it as unreachable for humans. A good place might exist somewhere, but we're just not compatible with utopia. Human beings are not fit for utopia because, as Anton said and as I said, we're flawed. And human beings are not only flawed, we are constantly we're in the state of flux. Like human beings don't stay in the same state. So for instance, we have to breathe. So we're inhaling and exhaling, and that's action. That's constant action going on. And if we stop breathing, if we stop doing that exchange of oxygen, then we die. So there's constant every single second, there's some kind of exchange and action going on in our bodies. And in a moment, I will be thirsty. And in some hours, we will all be very hungry in some hours. And then we at some point have to sleep. There are like basic things we need to do to keep our bodies alive. And so we can't just stay happy all the time. And Thomas More in Utopia explains how the houses look like and what the clothes look like. And even if the houses and the clothes and all the social structure worked for Thomas More, if you don't like the color of that particular clothes, that is the uniform of his utopia, then it's not utopia for you. I don't like that color. It's like sand beige brown or something like that, and I really don't like that color. So so there's no perfect society for everybody because every single person has different needs and different body mechanism and different taste. And we can move towards utopia. We can make a collective effort and have many collective disputes and many collective disagreements along the way. But there is no a good place that is reachable and where we can settle down and live happily ever after. We're just not built like that. But my favorite crazy Polish author, Bruno Jashinsky, put it this way. it's the process of moving towards that ideal place. That is your utopia, not the place, but the road towards utopia, where you meet people who have more or less the same thoughts as you do, more or less believe in the same idea as you do. And if you find that group of comrades, I like the Korean word, which in Chinese characters say same belief. So comrades, same belief. If you find people who have the same beliefs, same willpower, same will as you do, then a part of you, we're all mortal, so we will all die at some point, but a part of you will remain with them, and they will probably meet other people along the way, and the group, your will, your belief will survive, and you will just go on to make a better place. But there's no the best place where we can settle down. We just don't settle down. We have to move on.
Thank you. So we have to talk about Cursed Bunny a bit because it was such a great success for both of you. International Book Prize, shortlisted, nominated for the National Book Prize, all this, award nominations and attention from the press and the readers. And what was that experience like for you too? Because I'm pretty sure that you guys did not really expect it to be what it was, and it's still going. What was that experience like for you two, and to go through it together?
Okay, I'll answer first because Bora is holding up props. Um, I think I think I can safely say for Bora, I mean, I don't want to speak for her, especially if she's right here, but Bora hates attention and appearing in front of anyone, or doing anything that requires her to show her face. I mean, she's a really great teacher, but that's when she's like talking about other people's work, but like when she has to like make an appearance, it's like a whole. So because I know what she went through for the Booker, which came first, by the time we got to the National Book Award and we were longlisted, I was like, I barely congratulated her because I was like, oh, she's not gonna like this. And then when she got shortlisted, that's when I was like, hi, Bora. So congratulations. We now have to talk about, plane tickets and whatever. And then I could hear her sighing all the way over in Pohang, where she's like, oh, like, oh, I have to pretend to be like this world 작가, like like a international author. And I mean, we are both very, very grateful for the attention, especially me because I love attention. But I think for Bora, it was like a lot to ask of her because we have to fly internationally, and Bora has many deadlines. I mean, so do I, but Bora also has to go to like also goes to all of these protests and does all of this activism work. So I think she's a lot more ambivalent about all of the attention than it was for me. I think for me, it was really, really important that this author who had never been translated before and who was not super famous. Now she's super famous in Korea. But before I translated her, she was not super famous in Korea. So we basically, and she worked in a genre, she was not a 등단 작가. Like there were so many things working against her that for me it was imperative that, I keep throwing her out there and building her readership so that, we can both sustain our careers, like because, I'm kind of like a parasite on her. And like, Bora, you have to do well for me to do well. And so for me, like the Booker was kind of like the Booker because it came first, like the Booker was kind of like the culmination of that process because up until then, it was like it was all hustle, hustle, hustle. It was like, okay, Bora, we have to now you have to make an appearance at Berkeley. Now you have to make an appearance in Hong Kong. Now you have to make an appearance. So up till then, it was just like, we are going to make Bora as visible as possible for Bora. And like, we're going to make her into like this international author. And then the Booker happened. And if you look at the short list, Bora was the only one who was not famous in her home country and who was not like, an international author. Because um, if you look at like Jon Fosse won the Nobel Prize like later that year or the next year, and Olga Tokarczuk was one of our shortlisted, and then there was Claudia Pinheiro and Miyako Kawakami, who's like an international superstar writer, and so like, and then there's Bora Chung and Anton Hur, and we're like, oh my God, like we are we ran this con for so long that we have now become the con. We've managed to fool all of these people, and now we're sitting at like the Booker Prize ceremony, and this is so wild. Like how we are going to be found out at any point, and it's going to be so spectacular how everyone's going to be like, we were bamboozled by this book where there's like a head that pops out of a toilet. And the whole time we were like, do they realize that, in this book, there's a head that pops out of a toilet? Like, and now we're up against, Olga Tokarczuk, Jon Fosse, Miyako Kawakami, Claudia Pinheiro. Like, this is so wild. Like, and, Gitanjali Shri, who won. So this is so wild. So for us, it was always a process of A, gratitude, that and B, kind of like, I can't believe that we managed to pull off this con. Like it was like we did a heist at the Louvre, or I should say, I guess, the British Museum. We did a heist at the British Museum, and we got away with it. Like that's what it felt like for me. I felt glee more than, pride or any other emotion. Like glee was like the fundamental thing about it. And so if you look at videos, especially of me, um, from that period, I'm like, I can't believe we're doing this because this is so hilarious. Can you believe we're doing this? And Bora would be like, I'm so tired. Like, I'm so exhausted. Like, why do people want to look at me? I don't want to be looked at. It's like this really fun kind of like Bora and Anton show going on. Yeah, so that's how it is in my memory.
And that Bora and Anton show will continue because I believe, Bora, last time when we talked to you, you told me that you'll be translating Anton's novel into Korean, which is coming out the English version is coming out this summer. I'm assuming then the translated version is coming out shortly after. What were the sort of new challenges when each of your roles were kind of flipped around?
I already translated Anton's short story, where I'm one of the main characters. um, and I don't really see any challenges. I guess that was just fiction. That was fantastic. That was unrealistic, but it was not exactly science fiction. But this one is science fiction, so I'm assuming there will be a lot of new concepts and neologisms that I will have to deal with. But mainly, I understand Anton, and I understand the way his stories flow, so I don't really think there will be a lot of challenge. He's more poetic than I am. That's what I'm worried about. I'm as Anton said, I'm more prosaic, and I don't really worry about how beautiful or how mellifluous my sentences are, but he is a lot more poetic than I am. So I really don't like poetry. So, uh, how do I make Anton pretty? That's my worry.
So then, Anton and Bora, what do you think makes your partnership so successful?
I don't know why he likes me.
Oh my God, I have no idea. That is such a that question just kind of like hit me like a baseball. What does make our partnership? I think maybe it's because like we're friends, like either on top of what we do or like underneath what we do. Like I just really love Bora as a person, as a human being, as a friend. Like I went to a university that's known for having a lot of like really strong female students. And like I would have these Nuna 선배s and like I would look up to them so much. Like, I would always look forward to I would always look forward to going to like, the 동아리방, the club rooms and like, oh, I hope like one of the nunas are there so that I can beg them to buy me lunch and we can hang out and they can tell me like cool things about the world and, the economy and politics and how I should think about things. Like I had so many great like 선배s like that. And like to me, Bora is kind of like she has definitely has that energy where, this very cool person who knows so much about the world and is so generous in how they're sharing what they know about the world. And so I've always like loved just hanging out with Bora. Like if there's ever, an occasion where we get to hang out or we have to be together in the same room, I always look forward to it because like, oh, I'm gonna see Bora. Like it's always like a because I'm not like that with, all of my authors. I love all of my authors. But we all have a very different dynamic. Like, because, in Korean society, we're very 조심스러워, like we're very careful and we have to step back a lot, in order and that's a form of deference and understanding because like there are some authors of mine that I don't speak to at all, but not because like we don't have a good relationship. It's because we want to give them space and I don't want to put undue pressure on my authors. So, and they don't want to put undue pressure on me. Like it's a respectful kind of distance. But with Bora, I think it's just so because we have like very similar tastes, like very similar senses of humor that like I could send her a meme and then she will reply back with a similar meme and it's like really just really fun person to know, really cool person to know because she will tell you things, about the world, like why she's protesting and why she's at a certain place at a certain time. And and she's a great, great writer and so entertaining and so profound. And so like I just love working on her work and I guess like the partnership works and the books, the translations are good because it's so apparent that I was enjoying, the work so much as I was doing the work. And readers can tell and readers can kind of sense that. And yeah, I think that's what it comes down to for me.
And Your Utopia is available wherever books are sold. Thank you so much, Bora and Anton. It's always great to see you too. And we hope to see you again soon. And best of luck with everything.
Thank you for having us. Thank you, Korea Society. Thank you, Jay.
Yeah, thank you for listening to us. Thank you.